before walking on.
All righty. Welcome to the Church of Mabus radio show. You're listening to United Public Radio, 107.7 FM New Orleans. We're all still all alive and moshing to the apocalypse. Man, it's just accelerates in craziness every day on so many different levels. Try to keep it positive. And we got Mark Eddy here, Wham with us. Christina's going to be here. And would you like to introduce yourselves, Ron and Lourdes?
Hi, my name is Lourdes Gonzalez.
And I'm Ron Yacovetti. And together we're GonYac Paranormal.
Awesome. Well, great to have you here. And first, we're going to talk to Mark a little bit about the Bigfoot thing. And y'all are welcome if you have anything to add. I don't know much about it, but there's all the Bigfoot people are freaking out right now, having a meltdown from what I see. I've just seen little things here and there. I haven't gotten conversations with it. But Jeffrey Shanks, my archaeologist friend here in Florida, who helps do the Conan the Barbarian comics at Titan, writes the forts and stuff. But he was telling me about it, and it kind of seemed like some of the stuff he was telling me that it may have been a hoax, but I really don't know. I haven't seen anything enough to judge anything. But what do you think, Mark?
Okay, I just grew up always being aware of the Patterson Gimlin film. Okay, I really didn't know what to make of it when 10, 11, 12 years old. I did attend a lecture that Dr. Meldrum gave me about 10 years ago, just on top of the hill over here. And I was very impressed with his analysis of the movie. He just sits in there, playing it, regular speed, and use a little remote control to slow it down, pause it. He's making points about this looks like muscle movement on the thighs. Obviously, you have to notice the bouncing boobs. That's not really. I don't think it'd be as prominent in a costume. You don't see a zipper in the back, but watching the close-ups that Dr. Meldrum had, stop and pause, slow motion. You could see what he was talking about. I think he made a very convincing case. So 35 years later, after first seeing it, I think Dr. Meldrum convinced me that I think what we're seeing is authentic. Of course, you're gonna get deniers and
there's
accusations of hoaxers.
And that's what I thought too, Mark. And I still don't know, but what I'm being told from someone else, and that doesn't mean anything. It's an opinion. I haven't seen it yet, but I definitely think if he saw that, there's some new documentary or something. And supposedly Bob Gimlin, there's some kind of footage that shows costumes and stuff. And supposedly Gimlin is in that footage on some level. But I don't know. I mean, like I said, I don't know much about it at all, but I'd like to learn more about it. And Jeffrey's going to come on, the guy I've been talking to later in the summer, to talk about it. But he's like much more into it than I am.
If it was a costume. I think it was.
I just don't know. But I mean, I always thought it was real. I always thought it was real, but I still don't know.
That's where my argument is that okay.
There's one thing.
I don't know what we're seeing here. I'm maybe it is real, but if it was a costume, maybe it was far more advanced than we realized they had in 1967.
Well, I know I watch a lot of Bigfoot videos on YouTube and stuff, and of course, some of them are definitely fake, if not a lot of them, but some of them I do think are real. And I try to have discernment with all that stuff, slapped ham and all that stuff on there. I love slapped ham. There's some good ones on there. I've been getting into those a lot lately with Christina. It's like we have marathons just watching those things. But anyway, the thing is with him and Gimlin and everything, if it's not real, I just want the truth to come out about it. It seems like everyone's divided about it right now. Oh, I know the point I was going to make. I know in that footage, there's, of course, the boobage. And what I was going to say, all this footage I've ever seen, I've never really seen another Bigfoot with boobage like that. So that's my only question, whatever that means.
Well, what, a lot of people notice bouncing boobs, and it's there. It's not. I don't know how you fake that in a costume.
That's the thing for me. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know much about it either, but the boobs is kind of interesting. Really, I don't know.
Well, I guess I first saw this footage years ago, like 30 or 40 years ago, whenever it first came out. And I maybe it's, I don't know. I mean, to me, I think the thing that bothers me about it, not the footage itself, but sort of the narrative around the footage, is that there's this assumption on the part of some people that if it turns out that this is not real, or that it was hoaxed, or the possibility that it was hoaxed, that automatically means that there is no such thing as Bigfoot, or that it having been hoaxed proves that nothing about what Patterson experienced, because according to him, this wasn't the only thing he experienced. Okay, that this means none of what he experienced was real. And what my experience has taught me as a researcher, and there's a little bit of research about this with UFOs. But there's a ton of research about this with Marian apparitions and paranormal experiences that are connected to religion and spirituality, is that even if it is hoaxed or would be hoaxed or is possibly hoaxed, a lot of times people do things, if he did that, a lot of times those kinds of things are done not to fake people out, but in order to try to illustrate something that was experienced. And I think that that's what people don't quite understand about even events that are later proved as not being completely authentic. And again, like I said, the idea that just because, if it turns out that there's something fraudulent about it, that means that Bigfoot is not real, or that those experiences are not real. This is the kind of thing that polarizes people. And I think that probably all of it is a little bit more subtle than that. I mean, there are some women that are big enough and have boobs large enough that they might have been able to pull off a costume. Okay. But, you know, I guess I've always had two feelings about it. On one hand, I've always thought it was kind of an interesting piece of footage with some interesting characteristics. On the other hand, there's always been a part of me that has felt like it's too good to be true. You know, I have felt both of those things at different times. And so since I've had my own Bigfoot experience, I know what I think that is. I know that there is something. So my own belief, one way or another, doesn't hinge on what this, you know, what the final, if there can be a final thing about this particular piece of footage. I mean, after all, you know, for how many years have different people been trying to prove different theories about what happened to JFK? And we have tons more evidence there. And yet we don't know exactly what happened. You know, that people have tried to reproduce literally, you know, the conditions and the experiences and all that stuff. And there are still too many incommensurables. So, and with the Patterson Gimlin film, we just have like this one piece of film, you know, so, you know, one way or another, it's not definitive, you know,
it starts off though, where it seems like
Mark, I know the arguments.
Okay,
I've heard the arguments. I mean, I sat and listened to Meldron do the whole thing. That's not my point. I
was just saying it. The film starts off like he drops the camera. Mm-hmm. That seems to be a pretty normal experience. Like you see something so freaky, you know, you're ready just to take a regular photo of the, you know, raccoon climbing up the tree, and then all of a sudden, you know, great white shark, you know, comes out of nowhere, and you know you're so shocked that your hands are shaking, and you know I was trying to.
But see, if he was trying to reproduce, this is just an if he was trying to reproduce an actual occurrence to himself, then he would reproduce what he did, which is drop the camera. In fact, most people, when they encounter something that is completely unexpected, not only do they drop the camera, they actually forget to pull the goddamn camera out. Mm-hmm. That's what happens actually more often than not. But but it's like regardless of, because if a person was trying to produce something that illustrated what their experience was, like if they had a genuine experience, then they might do something like that, because that's not difficult to reproduce. All you do is drop the camera. You know, that's not that hard. The reason I say this, and this is where I really, really encourage people to do a deep dive into like Marian apparitions and stigmata and things like that, is, and even people like Uri Geller, you know, we all know about Uri Geller. And if you know the history about Uri Geller, you know that there were times when Uri Geller did absolutely real things that cannot be explained. And there were times when he was fraudulent. It was not either or, it was both. And the reason for that is that you cannot always recreate those kinds of paranormal activities on demand.
You run out of material.
Yeah, you know, it's like you cannot just, you know, conjure this stuff up automatically, but it's happened to you. So you want to portray what happened.
Right. I'm in 100% agreement on, and we get this in the paranormal a lot, that if the footage becomes non-authentic, that it does not mean that the cryptid creature itself doesn't exist. We get that all the time. It's the same thing. People conflate the difference between whether a phenomenon exists or whether a phenomenon can be willed on command when you want it to happen.
Exactly.
They're not the same thing. That said, though, if anybody is knowingly both experience something real, and then if they try to recreate or portray it for the purposes of sharing the experience, but they didn't share that they were sharing the experience, and
Right.
they point it off as real. One of the things that we have in this field is our integrity and our credibility.
Hmm.
And once, if it turns out that it was hoaxed, it doesn't mean Bigfoot's not real. It does to the people who never believed in it, because then that's their nail in the coffin. They go, aha. And it's
Right.
not an accurate argument, but it dings the credibility of one of the most compelling pieces of evidence that it's survived for years. So it doesn't
Mhm.
reflect positively on that. Once you do that, like if you testify and you lie under oath under one thing, everything else you said is called into question. That's the problem with it. If he did in fact try to share an experience by recreating it authentically, but didn't say that he was recreating it, that's a problem. And
Yeah.
it's an inexcusable problem from a research perspective.
Mhm.
Well, I don't
I
know the
agree.
full gist of it. I know that I think his son released something that showed him rehearsing or practicing the event like in '66, like a year before it actually
Right.
happened. That was what was
Right.
causing all the hoo-ha about this.
Yeah, well, and that's why we have to wait and see what the documentary actually says.
Yeah.
Because until we actually see what has been released, and not only see what has been released, but try to ascertain the intention behind it, until we see it, we don't really know.
Right. Yeah,
You
it would be unfortunate. I'll give you a great example of what we do with our digital seance is derivative of direct radio voice, which in the paranormal predates any Frank's box, spirit box, ghost box. It was just using a vacant shortwave, long wave, medium wave AM frequency. And it was developed by a gentleman named Friedrich Jurgensen. And then he taught it to Konstantin Radove, who before EVPs or electronic voice phenomena, before they were called EVPs, they were called Radove voices. And he taught it to Radove, and then those two in turn at some point passed it on to somebody who came to one of their things, whose name was Marcello Bacci. Marcello Bacci did sittings in Grosseto, Italy. A scientific team in Italy called Il Laboratorio investigated him for 3 years, including removing the vacuum tubes from his radio. He jumped through the hurdles, and he showed clearly that there was something phenomenal going on. Now, and I know this only because I was mentored into direct radio voices, what led to what we do, by Dr. Annabella Cordoso, who's the only living pioneer of voice phenomenon work that's left. And she told me that later on, after 20-something years of doing authentic work, where she sat with him as well as Robin Foy from the Skull Experiment, there were a couple of recordings, I think, that somebody had gone into, and I guess they found that they were audio fragments, or they were audio parts that were from, I think it was like a movie that was like a French dubbed movie or something like The Exorcist or whatever. So now this guy who put this voice phenomenon stuff on the map in a big way, 20-something years of credible, unchallenged, and not, I guess I shouldn't say unchallenged. It was challenged, but unsuccessfully so. Now it calls into everything gets called into question, because supposedly later on in life, for the needs of money and stuff, he may have fabricated a few recordings. And that's unfortunate, because for voice phenomenon work, what he did was unprecedented.
Yeah, it is too bad if somebody does something like that. But there's a long history of that in certain places. And it's it is too bad, because what it does is it misunderstands the entire set of phenomena, for one thing, and some of the psychological needs that some people will have to try to convey or convince people about what's going on. But it also pollutes the data pool. It does
Yeah.
all of that.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
And I want to do one quote from Jeffrey Shanks about the Bigfoot thing, and then we'll move on. And I would love to. I know my dad passed away from a heart attack right after I had cancer a few years later, and I know he was the most persistent individual ever. I know for a fact he's around. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind. But I would like to learn more ways to communicate, and I'm kind of hesitant with some of these these apps you see, and I'm like, does that really work? And then you see them actually on those videos using the same thing, and I'm like, does that really work? And I mean, I want something that really works, and maybe that stuff does work a little bit, but we'll get into it. But let me read this one quote, and we'll move on to the ghostly party show that we're doing right now. Well, this is from Jeffrey Shanks, archaeologist from Florida, a friend of mine. He's coming on. He works with the Conan the Barbarian comic from Titan. They have the rights to Conan. They're awesome. But he writes for them, and he doesn't mind if I read this, I know. Well, this is from him. Well, Bob is apparently in the footage, which means he's been lying all these years, so a lot of people are off, but I don't know. I don't know either, but he's a 96-year-old man who got caught up in something. It is what it is. It sounds like in the documentary when he was confronted by Patterson's son and Bob H. and shown the footage, he was agreeing to finally come clean and tell it all, but his wife intervened and stopped it. Honestly, at this point, I would just like to know the whole story. If it's a hoax, it's the greatest hoax of all time, and that itself is an amazing story. But they're basically saying from this documentary that there's some kind of footage in it. I don't even know the name of the documentary, but I will find it. I know I want to watch the David Paulides American Sasquatch stuff. And when I was interviewing David in written form and on the radio, he would never talk about paranormal when it came to missing 411. And he made me admit a Bigfoot question from the written questions for Florida Examiner. And I didn't care. I mean, I understood because he said he didn't want to bring that up to people. What just happened? What was that? Who's Carol? Carol Ann? Where did that come from?
Yeah, it's already starting.
Was that like a weird thing, like a StreamYard thing?
Yeah, could be a stream.
Let me tell you some of the weird StreamYard things we've had happen before. We heard drums once, and then the other crazy one, we're not going to get into it too heavily, but we heard a porno music, like a porno.
Oh, no.
It's like it came up, it was not us. I don't know if other shows leak into the show or it's the Matrix and the realities are converging. But
was it porno music or porno sounds? I thought it was porno sounds.
Who would have went? The music, we're used to that. But no. Anyway, David would never talk about paranormal. Now he's like balls to the wall. You got taken by an alien, the missing or being taken by UFOs. And he's going down. He's putting the pedal to the metal with the paranormal, which is fine. I think there's that element to it. But anyway, tell us, I guess, first, Ron and both of you, the spiritual component of this that you said that's unique. That's fascinating.
Yeah, if you want to speak to that. So, I mean, it's a form of mediumship, basically. Anytime there's a communication, which again started with direct radio voice, just using a vacant AM channel like shortwave, which is what our method is derivative of, that's the functioning medium. So there's not a spiritual component to the process of it, but I think especially she could probably speak to it more. There is a spiritual component to the activity of doing what we do, to the practice of it, to certain elements, that are behind the beliefs for it. But the methodology itself is pretty straightforward. It's using analog white noise generators that are creating white noise in real time, and it's putting it through an interface, and then that channels multiple channels of white noise into one, and then that goes through software, which is a virtual studio, a VST, and what it does is it filters, denoises, and amplifies all in real time. Everything people do with audio capture in the paranormal, when they get home, we're doing it in real time at the point of contact, because when you go home and review it, you don't get to have a dialogue. You get to listen to something that was said, and that's different. So that's the crux of it. We're the first ones to slow down the flow of white noise. It doesn't sweep There's no data in the white noise. It's analog. It's being created. There's no radio RF signal, no microphone input into the system. There's no sounds or word banks, even though we're using the computer for the virtual studio. There's no correlations to how apps work with sounds and banks and words and phonetics, none of that. It's just literally clean white noise from generators, and it's every frequency a human can hear, 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz, and we're just putting that through filtration and then slowing the flow of the noise down, because a lot of times the voices, which this is important why we should know the pioneers who came before us, would say that these voices not only come in faster than we can detect them, they come in faster than the human vocal tract is capable of speaking, which is why we started to slow them down. So that's pretty much what the process is. It predates a Frank's box or a Spirit box or a Ghost box. It's derivative of direct radio voice. The gentleman who's in Florida named Keith Clark from Varanormal with a V.com, he introduced us to the software, and then we were off to the races, and I experimented with different stuff for 3 or so years, working on trying to make the sound cleaner to the point where now you don't even hear the white noise. It almost runs dead silent with occasional blip, unless there's a word, unless there's a phrase, then we will hear stuff that will emerge from the speaker. And usually it'll be, not always, but sometimes it's short answers, but a lot of times we'll get things that are longer at the length by which we've never heard a Spirit box or a Ghost box do. I think by the way that they sweep, it doesn't allow for something that's longer to come through, where this, through the availing of the white noise, is somewhat of a
well, it's a constant, so there's no
Yes.
interruptions. With the sweep, you'll have an interruption.
There you go.
So we sometimes get a full sentence. We've had like 3 sentences come at once. And as far as the spiritual part, that will come from intention. The intentions of the people when they're there, if they want to, if they have good intentions and they want to speak to loved ones, or if they're really into the location, and our intentions, because we're all of us are part of the equation. So when we bring it out, we don't bring it out for us, we bring it out for the public. So a lot of times they'll get loved ones come through. I mean, we've had people that their partners bring them in because they had an experience with us and they're skeptical, and they've had loved ones come through, and now they're not skeptical anymore, and they thank us, and crying and hugging us. So that's where the spiritual part comes in. It's not the method, the computer. It's us and our intentions when we're communicating.
Yeah, I agree 100% that you can't have an experience without an experiencer.
Definitely. And what's some of the communication? Is it mostly positive, or does weird stuff come through too, or how does that work? Communication, like some of the stuff.
It is mostly positive. Not that we haven't got negative stuff. I mean, sometimes we get curse words. Every once in a while, we'll get the word demon and things like that. But for the most part, it's positive messages we usually get.
Cool. Like kind of afterlife family stuff, familia kind of stuff, stuff like that.
Yeah, well, the other day, right? On Saturday, I asked a question. I said, what do you think about today's society and humanity in today's society? I think that's what I said. And it says, I'm at a loss. And then I asked, what can we do to improve? And it said, changing. So that was, that was impactful. I thought that was impactful. So
when y'all are talking about white noise, we listen to a lot of those YouTube white noise, pink noise, and all that when you sleep and stuff, and we're like addicted to it. But I look at some of that stuff like, man, I need to do that. Man, they're like 1 million hits on those things. I was like, you just start making some of that. There's a technology where you make the white noise. It's like some kind of electronic equipment or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, what we're doing is you can get white noise generators, but they make sleep machines that are recorded white noise on anywhere from 3 to 10 second, 12 whatever second loop, and you'd never know because it sounds the same.
Yeah.
So we're not using that. We're using generators that are actually making the noise in real time, a few of them, and then we're fusing them into one channel, and they don't receive radio signal, which is important because that's part of the cynical low-hanging fruit for voice phenomena stuff when you're using radios. Is they go, well, your anomaly is voices, and you're using a device that receives voices, like going to the beach and dropping a bunch of coins and jewels and then coming back 2 hours later with a metal detector going, look what I found. You added it in there.
Because we're a little skeptical about the apps. I mean, you have to know how to use it. You have to trust the person who made it. But for the most part, we're pretty skeptical about the
Yeah,
apps.
here's the problem with
a database of words, and they could do it whenever they want. You know, how's
Right.
They make you think it's reading energy from the air, and there's some kind of tech that does that. But I don't. That's just a lot to swallow. I don't know much about that. But
the problem with the apps is that it's like looking for a black hair on a black carpet. You're going to find something. It's going to give you, this is where you differentiate between the evidence and results. It's going to give you results. And if it's relevant, it could be the microphone is allowing access to what you're saying. It could be geofencing. It could know where you are and then say things about where you are, especially when they add in things like generative AI. So there's variables that you don't know. Do I think it's impossible for them to produce an authentic result? No. But the problem is, again, black hair, black carpet. How do you differentiate and show the difference between a genuine article that comes through and that the app's just doing it? And with unknowns under the hood, even the timing and relevance, which we usually use to vet something as authentic, becomes shady. It becomes iffy because you can't know for sure that what you're dealing with isn't in some way influenced or contaminated. So that's why, and people who make apps will argue we only have to put it for entertainment purposes on it because they make you do it for the Google Play or the iPhone store. And I get that. But then my response is, when you go into a hospital and you see equipment that's used for surgical procedures or anything medical going past you in the hallway or in a room somewhere, and on that machine it says for entertainment purposes only, then you'll have an argument.
Because we used a couple of apps with from creators that we trusted, but when we asked a question, we didn't have the answer in the question. You know, we were very careful because we didn't know if it was recording and it spits it out.
Yeah, this is good advice. Say
right.
that again. That's important.
You know, so we would, if you wanted to answer like, I have glasses in my hand, can you say glasses? We wouldn't say that. We would just say, you know, what do I have in my hand or whatever, but to try not to put the answer in the question, just in case if it was recording or spitting it back out. But if you don't know that, and then see, that's the problem with it. You have to be really careful on how you use them, because, you know, there's a lot of variables there that, well, like Ron says, there's words in there.
Yeah.
And it can record, some of them record. So
if somebody's genuinely trying to do this for research or really genuine curiosity, I wouldn't think that they would have apps in their hands. The other problem with it is that a lot of public events, when they're spearheaded by a celebrity from a show who's appearing there, a lot of them are walking around with apps doing that. And that's it. All you need is the right talking head to be behind your campaign, and all of a sudden you have got the genuine article there. And I think that's frightening. I think that's a little bit
disingenuine.
Yeah, it's a little disingenuous. I think it's dangerous thinking, because you're giving credibility to something by the fact that somebody who's holding it has credibility. But where there's a disconnect between their credibility that you're assuming from television and maybe even their years in the field compared to the actual technology that they're wielding.
I mean, it was almost like a decade ago, and we were in the Queen Mary. And we were using an app. I'm not going to mention which one. And we asked a question, and the answer was, you started it, and it was relevant. We were like, oh, it had a certain tone, everything great. Yeah. Then like a year or so later, or maybe that same year, we were in another location here in New York. I think it may have, I forgot where we were.
New York.
And we asked a question, and the same exact words. You started it with the same inflections and everything. It was the same thing. And me and Ron were like, and everybody else was like, because they didn't know what we knew. Because then we were like, wait a minute, that doesn't.
It makes you feel like that, like synchronistic or something. It makes
same tone and everything. That's why I was like,
I never trusted it, but they did say some weird stuff a few times. I was like, what? Weird.
Yeah, and that's the problem. I think if any device can work that has the ability to modulate a sound into our hearing range, it's not impossible. It's not incoherent to say that the device can't produce an authentic result. It's not internally inconsistent. It's not contradictory. But this is where we get into slippery territory, because in the paranormal field, everything's very binary. Either it's real or it's fake. It's true or it's false. And that's not always it's not always the case to be able to draw that line, right? So in instances like that, you go, well, either it's a genuine result or it's not. But when you can't discern between the two, then then you're treading on a slippery slope, I think.
And what is like a TV when it does? Is that white noise, the static, like in a TV? Is that considered white noise? Like
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I used to stare at that as a kid, and sometimes I still find myself doing. It's probably what's wrong with me. There's something in there.
No, I do too. It's weird. I've been attracted to white noise for the longest. It's true. The white noise is the environment. The white noise. There's something about white noise.
She's been attracted to
something
white
wrong with me too.
She's been attracted to white noise, and in the 80s, I used to dance under that. White noise, ladies and gentlemen. And here we are.
Isn't that in Poltergeist, the movie? There's some scene with the white noise in the TV or something. I can't remember.
Mhm.
Yeah, it gets tricky. The thing is that if you can't prove it's false, people think it's true, and if you can't prove it's true, people think it's false, right? Again, that binary thinking, and it's not internally inconsistent. It's not incoherent. That it can produce, an app can produce an authentic result. But the question, the way we look at it is, as metaphysical idealists, is do we have any reason to lean into it? Because you can say that everything out in space, everything in the cosmos, planetary movements, gravitational forces, gravitational lensing, dark matter, you can say all that stuff is not what's going on. All that's happening out there is there's this big flying spaghetti monster that's an other dimensional being that we can't see, and it's spinning the planets and moving things around with its noodly appendages. You can say that. And the evidence for it that you're using to support it is there, right? The planets do all those things, right? It's not internally inconsistent. It's not incoherent, but there's no reason to lean into it. So that's what we look at. Just because you can argue for something based on the result, which is somewhat circular, doesn't mean that you have a genuine article as far as a theory or a hypothesis goes, purely on the fact that you can't disprove it. Because you can't disprove the flying spaghetti monster, but there's zero reasons to buy into it, even though it is internally consistent and it is coherent. And then the results that you're saying it causes are there.
And definitely, I definitely want to hear some of your encounter stories, like if you have personal paranormal stories. But I want to tell a story that some of the stuff me and Christina have had happen when we were at the other house that we're here now at another house. But when it got sold, we had a glass explode after her grandmother passed away. Something slapped the bed. And it was like I got up to look to see if something fell on it, like nothing fell. And I had a flashlight, like looking around. I was like, "What? Something slapped the bed." We had the same slap happen to the RV when we were sleeping in it, and no one was around. But one of the weirdest ones, and it's kind of messed up, and you can see it as a comedic in a way. My dad used to go around. He was very kind of annoying sometimes. We loved him, and he loved us, but he could be scary too. But sometimes he'd come up to people and do this thing he called bulldog, where he kind of pretend humped you. And I know I know it's hard for me to remember. But anyway, she had that happen when she first met me, and it was not me, and we were in the same room. I've never done that. Well, maybe joking around or something, playing around. But like a specter did it, like something invisible did it. And I was on the other side of the room. So that's why I think he's here. And he was very persistent, for sure.
You didn't tell me the story about it specifically, about him doing that to people. And it was scary because I was climbing onto the bed, and it was like it grabbed me on my hips and pulled me back across the bed. I mean, I'm like a 200-pound woman, and I went sliding across the bed and screamed, "Jeffrey!"
Yeah.
And literally, it was like something bumped me from behind, like, boom. Weirdly, again, I'm sorry.
And Bulldog came up to her, and I'd never said anything about that to you ever, have I? No. I didn't.
Pretty sure I have.
Try to keep that story to myself, unless I'm on radio, of course. But anyway,
There you go. There's that.
My big mouth. Is Mercury retrograde over? My God, I almost died during
Yes, it has ended. It has ended. It has ended.
Thank you.
I'm so tired of getting
I went to
blamed for
jail
everything.
for a misdemeanor first offense. We don't have to get into it. 2 nights in jail. I've just had I have a toxic water settlement because I'm a testicular cancer survivor, and they had to get medical records, and it was from 1992, and we could not find the records anywhere. They couldn't find the records, so I'm still trying to get this settlement from some weird thing my mom saw on Facebook about a settlement with toxic water in your zip code for cancer people. And anyway, now I'm hunting for this piece of paper, this magic piece of paper. There's some other things that may turn out with it to get this settlement, but it's just been Mercury retrograde. I survived this Mercury retrograde. It's been crazy. Yeah, it's her. Mercury retrograde is her. She's a Virgo, so it's her fault.
He's Saturn, so I'm like, I don't
I'm
blame the devil
Capricorn,
for
which
everything.
I'm
He
the
blames
devil.
Mercury
That's
for
great.
everything,
Thanks. I'm glad to be a Capricorn.
Let's
Wonderful.
deal with stuff.
I don't know if I agree with that
I'll be
tarot
right back.
interpretation of Capricorn.
Get the scalpel.
I've noticed that lately that in tarot, she listens to those reading things. A lot of those people always associate Capricorn and the devil. I'm like, gee, thanks.
No, it's just the card. It's not a negative thing. It's just the opposite of the lovers, where it's like you're caring more about your things in life instead of connection and investing in the world as a oneness of love, which is what we need to be shifting to. So if we do like someone said about intention, if we do all we do with intention and usually love and good thoughts and so on, it will come back around. But
Yeah.
doing it about money, that's the problem. Greed, and sadly, that's the problem. So
That is the problem. That's a big problem. Oh, very cute.
Thank you.
Very
It's a
cute. Boy or girl?
boy, and he's a mess, and I don't want to fix him, but he is misbehaving bad, and I have to. But I don't want to. No.
Safety. Yeah.
But anyway, someone threw him out at a park. We have a lot of rescues here, and there's a park that people just throw them out. Perfectly good dog, and they had food for him that had mold on it and a bowl. And the cops said we could take him as long as you love him. So here he is. If he'll just stop humping everything in the house, we'll be fine.
Maybe that's why he came over. We were just talking about Bulldog, and then and then the dog came over.
Your dad is in the door.
That's your dad.
You gotta come to the ghost party. But anyway, that's what I jokingly said. We're having a ghost party. But I like ghosts. It's very fascinating. Sometimes I can find myself getting bored with it, but you're kind of livening me up about it, so I appreciate that. It's not boring, but I mean, sometimes when I've seen UFOs and weird alien beings, the ghosts, it can be fascinating. I always love to talk about ghosts and the clothes they wear. When you see one, it's like in a pioneer outfit. Like some woman at Sam's told me a ghost story. I went up to her and did some Ghostbusters quote, and I forget what it was, but she told me a paranormal story after doing it. And she saw a pioneer woman in her living room. Why do they have those clothes? Do you get to change your clothes? Is it just seeing the past? Do you get a ghost wardrobe and you can just change it out? Am I going to die? If I died right now in this, that would be cool.
My son used to watch that. My son and his stepdad used to watch that show.
Man.
He's got the same shirt.
I'm in Florida, and he's on MeTV, and it's amazing. He's like a dude Elvira, but he's more goofier. It's like those are a dying breed. I love those kind of things like that. And he comes on every Saturday, and there's a weird one, man, that comes on PBS that's so weird, and it even I'm weird, but it out weirded me. I was surprised it was on PBS. It's called Nightmare Theater, and it comes on late on PBS, and there's a dude dressed like a goofy werewolf furry, a dude with devil horns, and a guy with a wrestling Mexican mask on, like Santos or whatever. And they just showed Nosferatu. But what's so weird, they just show weird old crazy things with big bugs and stuff running around, those kind of movies. But what shocked me so much, that was on PBS.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised this dude's on MeTV. I love it. I mean, it's rare. That's why I like it. It's unique. I have the figure. He has a figure that he even has action figures. I see grannies at conventions coming. They even know him. Like, he's bigger than I even imagined. He's been around a while, but started in Chicago. But yeah, it's cool. But yeah, tell me about, have you had some personal paranormal encounters, or what brought you into what was the catalyst that brought you into this subject? Mine was testicular cancer and almost croaking, and my dad, crazy dad, and UFO. Seeing that stuff is why we're doing it. But I'm curious, what got you started? What was the catalyst?
Well, I'll tell my very short version of it because I already explained the method. I got into it because I was always fascinated with this stuff, and then I started doing what was called ghost hunting, I guess, initially when I lived in Los Angeles for 14 years. And through that, I developed an affinity for the voice phenomena stuff, and then especially ITC, or instrumental transcommunication, which is what the box is, and what we do is considered real-time stuff. And so when I saw that that was something people actually genuinely researched and experimented with, that hooked me, and I thought it was fascinating. And so we dove into doing that. I was doing that when we met. I got her into it. We developed this method now of the digital seance experience, and we study consciousness, analytic idealism, metaphysical philosophy. And so that's the encapsulated version of what hooked me and how. She has it imbued through her family line, and it's much more interesting than that.
Yeah, I was basically born into it because my family is from Puerto Rico, and they practiced, because they don't do it anymore, espiritismo, which is it comes from the Caribbeans, and they were physical mediums. So most of my family members practiced it, and they would do ceremonies and rituals. But my mom, who was the youngest of the bunch, and there's a lot of them, she was the youngest, she didn't practice. But we would go to these things. And so my cousin was channeling spirit, and she bumped into my mom. And when she bumped into my mom, they both started channeling. So that terrified me, because I knew that my mother didn't practice, and she was moving and speaking in ways that I knew that wasn't my mom. So I shied away from it for a long time, and I would actually argue with them, like, you shouldn't be doing this, you shouldn't be doing that, and things like that. But I still would have like precognitive dreams and things like that, which was always welcome in my family. Like, a lot of people experience them, saying, well, you have a overly vivid imagination. Well, for me, it was always welcomed. So I still had experiences, but the physical mediumship, I was like, So then after years and years, we started dating, and he had on his profile Ghost Hunters, and I was Ghost Hunter, and I was like, oh, interesting. And then he started taking me into investigations, and then I just went right back in. He sucked me back in. So but I've had a lot of precognitive dreams. Like, I had a dream, a coworker. Well, it stopped after this. In 2007, one of my coworkers was pregnant, and I had a dream, and I was floating, and I see a hospital bed, and just her hair, just a little bit of her blonde curly hair, and the baby was born, and it was a girl, but in the vagina there was teeth. And then I woke up, and I was like, Taina's gonna have a miscarriage. And sure enough, like 3 days later, she had a miscarriage. Now, before those 3 days, I didn't know what to do with the information. I called my mom. I was like, I can't go and tell her this dream, right? So I carried it, and then it happened. Then I started feeling like when she would come to work, I started feeling like emptiness. I don't know, like emptiness. It's just emptiness. And I was thinking, well, maybe it's because she's depressed because it's a baby. But then a month later, she passed. She had an aneurysm and she passed. So after that, I had created a block. I no longer have those dreams, because it's like even though it's not your fault, it still feels like it's your fault. And it's like a burden that it's weighing on me. So I've been trying to see, doing these experiments to see if I can break myself out of it. But I've always had paranormal experiences since I was since as long as I can remember, honestly, because that's not the only precognitive dream. I've had a lot.
Well, go ahead, Mark. Go.
Oh, I just wanted to ask Lourdes and Ron. We're just kind of touching on one of the questions I had jotted down, to ask, and Jeffrey said something about specters. Both of you have mentioned, that this is a fascinating topic, and, I think it just seems like the human condition, uh, you know, is just programmed to it's kind of wonder, where do we go after we die? I think that's part in every culture from recently until, or going back to caveman times. Dante wrote books about the afterlife. So seems like it's normal to want to understand the paranormal. Where does it seem like it crosses over into being a little dangerous?
I think that if you go looking for bad, you'll find bad. It's all about intentions, right? So if you're gonna go wanting to speak to a demon, then that's what you're gonna get. Like that's what, and not to say that if you're not looking and you're trying to look for angels that you may encounter one or not. I'm not saying that, but it really diminishes it quite a bit, like a lot. It doesn't usually happen. But if you're looking for it, or doing things that you're not supposed to really be doing, it can get dangerous. It can get dangerous, but it's not something that happens on a whim like that. It's a very small percentage of that happening. But I guess that's why that scared me with my mom, because I perceived it as something bad because she didn't practice. So when that happened without any permission, and then actually later on that night, my cousin was cooking something in the kitchen, and then it happened to her. She practiced, but it was always about permission, and there was no permission. And it just the spirit came into her, and she started channeling. So I perceived that as a bad thing, honestly. And I've never seen anything like that ever since. But I don't think it's as dangerous as people think. But I do believe if your intentions is to be talking to something dark, that eventually, even if it takes a long time, eventually you'll come across something dark. It's just like if you hang out with the wrong people in this life. If you hang out with the wrong people in this life, well, something bad is eventually going to happen to you. I mean, that's pretty much how it works. Because I don't think doing spirit communication, like some people think it's all demons. No, it's not that. Because a lot of times we get people's loved ones come through, and it makes them feel better. They get that closure that they're looking for.
Yeah.
But
A lot of the lines between religion, spirituality, science, philosophy get blurred through the application of things in areas that they don't necessarily apply. They're theoretically making category errors by assigning things certain attributes or functions that are not inherent or even tangentially related to what it is that they're talking about. So for us, like I would look at certain things like that, like we're, like she said, part of the experience. We have this subject object relational perception thing, but we're part of the whole, right? We're part of the whole. There's a oneness to, we believe, to what's a universal consciousness that we're part of. We believe that we're just individuated or dissociated parts of one mind at large, let's say. So we perceive things outside of us with this subject object thing. So we think, like with karma, we think we do something and then we get punished or rewarded by the universe by it sending something back at us or to us. And I would look at this a different way. And I love the idea. It comes from a mindset of a philosopher named Alan Watts, that when you do or act in a way, you behave in a way, you are embarking on on an action or a process. And then, so what we perceive as karma, as the universe throwing something back at us to punish us, is not something separate from what we did. It is part of the entirety, the totality of what it is we did, which if of a negative or an ill-intended state, then that is what we experience in turn, because we initiated that excitation of our subjective field, let's say, right? We put that in motion. So it's not do something bad, wait around, then the universe slaps you back. When you get slapped back, it is part and parcel of what you started in.
You surrounded yourself with, yeah.
We confused the causality and correlation part of it. Alan Watts had a great metaphor that if all you could see from where you were sitting was this big fence was blocking your view, and there was just a slit between the fence that you could see through, and then you would see a cat walking by, you would see a head, and then you'd see the tail. And then a minute later, the other way, you'd see the head, and then you'd see the tail. And it would happen a couple more times. From that, we would deduce that the head causes the tail. Because every time you see the head, tail follows. Instead of looking at that as the totality of one thing. And it's in motion. So you see the one thing, and then the other thing, which is part of it, comes after it. So I think that's part of this separating ourselves from the experiences thing too much. And then there was something else I wanted to say too, with regards to when you were talking about how things being negative and inviting them in. It'll come back to me. I forget where I was going with it, but it was along the lines of what we were just saying.
And as far as like, where do we go? Now we're not saying that we are correct, right? We don't know if we're right or wrong, but as idealists, we believe in analytic idealism. Heaven and hell for us is not in like a place. It's more of a mental state. It again with intention. So if you're living your life a certain way and then you pass, wherever that mental state that you're in is where you're gonna be in the afterlife. So if you're living, your life and you're happy and this and that, then where you move on in a mental state will seem like heaven. Whereas maybe if you're not living such a great life and you're doing all these crazy things and crime and all that, well, where your mental state is at the moment when you pass on, it can be considered as hell. So we don't think it's an actual place. And as far as we think they're all around us now, it's not like they go into this different separate dimension, but that they're now in a higher vibration where we can no longer see them, but they're all around us. Just like when you boil, this is a good example that I've been using, like when you boil water and it's boiling and you boil it for so long, it becomes steam and then it evaporates, right? The water doesn't go into another dimension. It's still around. And then when it rains, it's in a lower vibration and then it comes back around. So we think it's just when we move on, we're in a higher mental state where you no longer see a physical being, but they're still all around us, which then it can explain why some people hear disembodied voices, which I've heard for the first time in the Queen Mary, literally someone say no in my ear and there was nobody there. So it can account for that if they're all around us and we just can't see them because they're vibrating in a higher mental state.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, too, to circle back to the beginning of the show, what she just explained is part of how we look at, and this is a very popular theory or hypothesis with regards to cryptid stuff. I know with Bigfoot, it became more of a thing, which is the interdimensional hypothesis that through vibratory rate changes, and I assume it implies that it's willfully done, that the creature exists and it'll just vibrate to a rate that is not visible or detectable to us, and then it goes to another dimension, right? And then that's why we can't see it, and that's why we can't capture it or get clean pictures or whatever, because it's always popping in and out of existence. So first, as idealists, we believe that we start with the experience and we try to make heads or tails of the experience instead of starting with a theory and then trying to find things that fill out the theory. I think that's working in reverse, right? You start with the experience. Under idealism, which is a metaphysical position, reality is fundamentally mental. The foundation for reality is subjectivity or consciousness, mentation. It's important to know one's metaphysical stance, because when you're trying to explain these things, if you don't know what it is, you're either going to have one foot in one and then you're going to put your foot into another one, and you're going to go back and forth, and you will develop ideas or hypotheses and theories that are inconsistent, because you invoke science in one avenue, and then the next step in your theory, you're doing something that completely contradicts or conflicts with that same science, or with a science, and now you have an internally inconsistent theory that doesn't add up. So what she was talking about, you have water, slowed vibration ice, faster vibration water, faster vibration steam, and then it's still present but is no longer detectable to our senses or our dashboard of dials, which is our sensory input and tells us what's going on around us, right? So it doesn't mean that it goes into another dimension just because it's no longer detectable. Why is that important to us? Because of the experience and the explanation that interdimensional hypothesis puts forth, that it's a vibratory change that makes it undetectable, that can still hold. Where we diverge from that is that when the vibratory rate changes, it's not going to another room in the palace. It's just not detectable within the room that you're already in.
Right.
That's important because that line is drawn based on the metaphysical position. Metaphysics, by the way, does not mean candles and incense and sage, and it literally means that which stands behind the physics. Science will tell us what nature and reality does. It'll model and predict behaviors of nature. It'll ask questions of it through experiments. You get outcomes. It doesn't tell us what nature and reality is. Rather, it tells us what it does, not what it is. That's a philosophical or metaphysical philosophy perspective to take, and we don't pin it down, but we try to come as close to it as we can, being skeptically parsimonious, meaning as few steps as possible without inventing things to fill out a theory, and without conflicting with known regularities in science, which we call laws, which we shouldn't. And I think that happens a lot in the paranormal. So now you take this cryptid thing and you say that it vibrates at a different rate, and now we can't see it and experience it anymore. The reason we diverge on that point is if you say that it's going to another place, you're implying physicalism, or what used to be called materialism. If you say that it's vibrating and it's still within the same field of subjectivity and consciousness that we're in, but no longer detectable to us, then you have a more sound metaphysical support for it. It's the same thing that holds up an explanation that you would give for infrared or infrasound, which we don't detect either without instrumentation. So
That's all you need. You don't need the extra step.
right.
It's just vibrating at a higher state where you can no longer see it, but it's still there. You just can't see it.
Right.
It doesn't need to go to another dimension, just like the water.
Right. As soon as you imply or infer another place that it goes, you're implying materialism or physicalism. And why is that an issue for, I guess, from where we're standing for our explanation, is because that metaphysical position is a dying breed, and it's not internally consistent for explaining what reality is. And it's important, right? Because when we deal with these conversations, people go, you don't think that's real, do you? You don't believe ghosts are real? You think Bigfoot's real? UFOs are real? Well, I think if you don't have an idea of what you think reality is, you can't make an educated guess as to what you think what may or may not be real, right? And so physicalism and materialism fall short. And one of the big things that poked a hole in it was what was called, or what is called, the hard problem of consciousness, right? Under physicalism or materialism, the world is fundamentally made up of physical stuff. That's it. Everything else comes from that. So your brain, which is this gushy physical thing in your head, gives emergence to consciousness. And then when your physical form dies, no more consciousness. It's all gone. There's no survival theory. There's no afterlife. That's it. So when you have a hypothesis or a theory that's foundation is rooted in materialism, you're contradicting your position if you're saying at the same time that cryptids like Bigfoot exist, that somebody actually experienced it. Because now you're explaining its disappearance rooted in a metaphysical stance or view of reality, a worldview that doesn't even allow for it. It's a contradiction. Under idealism, everything physical is just representation of what's out there. There's a world out there. Your brain is not creating your consciousness. But what we perceive as physical is not fundamentally physical. This jives with quantum physics because it says that physicality is a result of observation and measurement. Things are not physical with parameters that you get revealed when you measure or see them. No, they're revealed. They are the product of observation, and which is why you can have things like entanglement happen. So when an explanation for something like interdimensional hypothesis explains Bigfoot, with the vibratory change and the inability to detect it anymore, I'm on board. But when you say it's going to another dimension, like another place, you're implying another physical space, another realm of existence that we have no access to. So it's empirically vacant. We can't falsify it. We can't test it directly or indirectly. We can't even infer it through anything. It's not grounded in anything. We're just creating something for the purposes of needing it. Like, so we know that this other dimension exists because these things disappear into it, and they disappear into it because it exists. It's circular reasoning. It doesn't go anywhere. It's self-referencing, self-validating. So that's the difference between where we're coming from with idealism, is that in a mental reality, these things can disappear through a vibratory change, and they still exist. They're just not detectable, but they're not going to another physical place that we have no access to.
And it doesn't conflict with science. It
Right.
doesn't conflict with physics, because water does the same thing. So if the being is doing the same thing, vibrating at a higher rate, it's still there. It's just we can't see it anymore. And we know that there's things out there that we can't see, like
Right.
Ron mentioned before.
And just to give brief explanation to the reason why physicalism or materialism is not as popular as it was, nor I think a sufficient explanation for defining what our reality is that these things happen in, besides not allowing for these phenomena, is two things. One, I mentioned the hard problem of consciousness, which says that there's no way to deduce, at least in principle, the qualities of experience, the taste of chocolate, the smell of a strawberry, the softness of a rose. There's no way to deduce in principle the qualities of experience from any physical arrangements. There's no way to say that something physical is giving rise to these experiential states, or what's called qualia, qualitative states. So for the brain to be creating consciousness, it would have to have an answer for that. And that's why it's called the hard problem of consciousness, because it does not have an answer for that. It's not a problem to be solved. It's a problem that says we need to take a step back, that our view of reality, our worldview, is flawed.
Right.
And we need to have something that holds up science, consists with science, right? Doesn't conflict with it, but at the same time also does not exclude from the table that which people do in fact experience. That's the problem with the heart problem.
It was a problem that was created through them.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And then the other thing is too, is that I think a lot of people are on board with what you would call a dualism, saying that this was very Cartesian, or from Descartes, that you have two things to explain all reality. You have mind, mental mind stuff, and you have matter, physical stuff. Mind and matter explains everything. Two incommensurable things that both jointly will explain everything. And the problem with that is that is an internal contradiction, because it says these are two separate things, mind and matter. And then it tries to explain mind in terms of matter by saying that matter in your brain is creating your mind, which is your consciousness, which is a contradiction. So that's why we think that the metaphysical position of something like idealism, even a dual aspect monism that says there's one thing, but two sides of it are physical and mental, that's a little closer, I think, to what would add up. But that's why that's important to us, is because it allows for these experiences. It doesn't conflict with science. It doesn't challenge the science at all. And when people in science use that as a disqualifier for what we do, they're making it convenient. It's very easy to explain everything that's on the table once you've removed from the table that which one cannot explain.
I mean, there's been a paradigm shift happening now, where there's a lot of scientists who believed in materialism,
right,
and now are flipping into something like idealism, or what's the other one you said?
Panpsychism.
A dual
aspect monism.
Yeah, they're changing because they're realizing that materialism just does not work, and they've been holding on to that for a really long time. But now there's slowly a paradigm shift happening with that.
And that's why we try to stress that, because metaphysics, to identify it with like woo stuff, with like sage and crystals and candles, it does it a disservice, because it's your view of what you think the world and reality is. And even if you don't think you need to focus on that, because you're just focusing on the science, right? when you just focus on the science, science itself should be metaphysically agnostic or neutral, but science is done by people. And if they have beliefs or biases about what reality is and what can be real or what could ever happen or not, what's impossible, then those things are going to taint or shape or guide the way that they interpret, perceive, and process the information that they get from anything phenomenological. So they become unexamined assumptions that are part of the equation because of what their metaphysical position is. That's why those things are important. The very famous from Carl Sagan, it's called the Sagan Standard. It says, and everybody's heard this before, that extraordinary circumstances require extraordinary proof or evidence. That is only true, only if by extraordinary it is termed so, because what happened is not accepted as possible within a dogmatic view or an ideology that says it's impossible, which is materialism, which is why Bigfoot and UFOs and spirits and spirituality and ghosts, that's why all that stuff needs some kind of grandiose explanation to match the grandiose claim, because it doesn't fit into a belief system. We start with belief.
Because people seem to think that science can tell us what being is,
Right.
and it can't.
Right.
It only predicts what it does. That's all it does, but it can never tell you what it is. That's a philosophical question.
Yeah, people think that the scientific method is all knowing, which is an unexamined assumption. It's not. It in fact works circular because it proves itself by demanding scientific evidence. So it's not to say the scientific method doesn't have a place. It does, but you can't use that, for example, to pin down. Because this came up one time on a chat or a posting thing online not that long ago, that was about materialism, anti-materialism, and then the counter was, well, when has idealism provided a hypothesis that turned true to become a theory, that turned true to become proof and fact? And I was like, well, that's not what metaphysics and philosophy does.
No.
All you have to do to put forth a theory in philosophy or metaphysics is have something that has explanatory power, that's internally consistent and is coherent and skeptically parsimonious, as few steps as possible, right? Occam's razor. That's what you need. Science operates under a different set of rules because you're talking about empiricism, where you have results and you have things that you can measure and quantify. You can't quantify qualitative states or experiences, right? And it goes back to that whole trying to recreate the experience Bigfoot thing. If I experience hunger, you won't feel my hunger, I feel it. And then I can't, how do I recreate that so you experience? I can't. So I have to tell you about it. And then that's where integrity and our
he can't prove to you that he's hungry, right? He can only tell you, but he can't really necessarily, he can't give you the evidence that he's hungry because you can't measure that.
And I also had to take notes. I had some oil earlier, and with you guys, the intellectualness is like doing psychedelics. So it's good. But I appreciate it.
Psychedelics have done a lot to push the conversation of consciousness forward.
Definitely.
Because people have realer than real, more vivid and visceral experiences under psychedelics. And once we were told that once upon a time that when you did those, your brain would be lit up like a Christmas tree. And what they found out is that's the opposite. The closest to being dead to death in brain activity is under psychedelics, which also does what? Puts a dent in materialism. Because if you think that the brain is creating consciousness, then every time you have an experience that is highly intense, you have to have brain activity that matches it. Because if you're saying it's causal, not correlating, causal, then every time this happens, the cause has to be there, right? That's that whole, you show me one black swan and you can no longer say all swans are white. You have to have the cause every time if that's what it is. So when you do have psychedelics, you have brain activity that's like this.
It slows down.
That's slowed down. Rather, you have experience that's here and you have brain activity that's down here, which shows you that the brain is not causing conscious experience. Sometimes it will correlate because it is a representation of what's going on in one's consciousness. So it will a lot of times correlate to the experience, but it's not causal. And that one experience is your black swan. That's what undermines the whole idea that the brain's creating one's consciousness.
Definitely. And I'm kind of curious of what some of your data is about light beings. Does that come up a lot? Because that's something I think when I had testicular cancer and I lost one, we've done shows on trauma that definitely opened up my senses, and I start to see UFOs and light beings. With my physical eyes, I saw beings of light,
Mhm.
spirits. I could go off my porch at Silver Lake, at a house where there's a beautiful lake, and look into the heavens and see those light beings in the heavens like they were in another realm. It was like
Yeah.
watching a weird Sims game, but just like seeing them in that other realm. And I've had them appear to me on a cloud and do their finger like this when I was with a friend and we were driving, and we were right down the road from my house. We probably shouldn't have been driving, and we were partying, but a light beam came, it goes, and it just vanished. I was like, did you see that?
Yeah.
Yes. Did you see that? Yes. But one thing I noticed with the beams of light that I've seen, and I just want to know what your experiences are with that topic, beings of light, because I'm always gathering data like who were they, because I saw them, and they seem to have a connection with the sun. Like, I believe the sun is a source God. There's a lot of, conversations with God and stuff gets into that. There's a whole book. I've interviewed Jeffrey Mishlove about consciousness. It's been a long time ago,
Okay.
but yeah, I love him. He's great. Does some great things. But those beings of light, they seem to have a connection with the sun. That light seemed like light from the sun. And I know that there's a soul sun connection or something like that, because I've had weird sun experiences where I'm like, are you following me? Like, like it's trying to commute. Like, is there communication taking place here? It's like I've seen the Jehovah's Witness pamphlets with the dude in the throne. That's the sun. I'm like, well, maybe there's a little truth to that, but I'm not a Jehovah's Witness. But there's something like it's a dude. Like the sun is some kind of consciousness that may be responsible for all of this on some level. But I'm just kind of curious. What do you think about all that? The sun and the soul and light, the light beings.
I mean, all of that is possible, because who's to say who's wrong, who's right? But we believe fundamentally those what we call light beings are a consciousness, like beings of consciousness. And perhaps what's going on is that you're seeing some type of entity, but it's not manifesting in a way that you can see it completely, that you're seeing it as light, and it's not enough photons or whatever you need to be able to see it in its entirety. And who knows why you see it that way, but if you believe that and it maybe it does have to do with the sun, because if we're all part of the same thing, especially when we move on, maybe that is what we need to be able to manifest to the ones that are living here, is that light from the sun. Like, who knows? But we believe that those light beings are fundamentally consciousness, beings of consciousness.
Yeah. I mean, to her point, we believe that we are fundamentally beings of consciousness. Under idealism, reality's subjectivity or consciousness, right? And so the knock against materialism was the hard problem of consciousness, right? That it can't get around. The knock against idealism is that if there's only one mind in reality, how do you explain all of us? Because we don't identify as the same person. And the answer to that is, and again, this is not a definitive answer, but an explanation for this, which is drawn from something we do see in reality that we can extrapolate onto a grander scale, is dissociation. We know that one mind, through what used to be called multiple personality, but which is called dissociative identity disorder, one mind can fragment into individual centers, multiple centers of subjectivity or identity. That can happen. So under idealism, each one of us is an individuated alter. We are individual dissociated parts of that one reality, which is why there's a connectedness to it, which is why we have things like synchronicities, why you'll think of somebody and then they'll call. There's a connection fundamentally to what we are, but we're dissociated. Now,
not in a pathological sense.
Right.
Like here. Not
right.
in a,
it's not a pathology. We don't need
yeah.
to cure the universe, but it is a model that we see in mind in nature that we could use to explain or get around the how do you explain all of us if there's one mind to reality kind of a thing. So to say that light beings are something that is perceived as an autonomous entity within consciousness, to me, it seems possible and makes sense. It seems coherent, because under idealism, so are we, right? And we just happen to be perceived as physical through our dissociative state, but it doesn't mean that those things can't be. Now, the connection to the sun for me, and she and I are on the same page almost entirely, but you'd be surprised some of the philosophy conversations. The only times we've ever been in public and people thought we were like an angry couple arguing was over philosophy.
Yeah.
Because for the most part, we're on the same page, but sometimes we'll have a divergence. I'm not so quick to say with the sun. Now, there is a very, very well-respected biologist named Rupert Sheldrake who has put forth, I guess, a concept, or I don't know if I say a hypothesis about the possibility of the sun being conscious. I hesitate on that because what we see in nature at large, anything that we would consider conscious or like a sentient being, is a self-organizing, metabolistic, ATP burning creature or being, right? That's what we see. So I would hesitate. I would say the sun's within consciousness. I wouldn't say that it is conscious, because if it is, how would, I guess, I don't know, like, first of all, we would have no direct access to that to know it necessarily, right? Like, what would its inner life be like? And then now the way, this is another metaphysical position I mentioned before, panpsychism. Panpsychism is the materialist way to get around the hard problem of consciousness. It goes, well, physical stuff doesn't give rise to consciousness, like your brain. Everything, every atom, every molecule is conscious. So now, ta-da, no problem, no hard problem of consciousness anymore. Everything's conscious. The problem with that is that falls victim to what's called the combination problem. Let's say we go with that. Let's say that this table is conscious.
Yeah.
If I cut a leg off the table, does that leg have its own consciousness now? What if I nail it back to the table? How do those two consciousnesses merge? If every cell, every atom within somebody or something is conscious, how do you reconcile all those different consciousnesses coming together for one subjective experience? It's a nightmare. So that's...
But we don't disagree with the sun, because I wasn't saying that either. What I'm saying is, though, he sees them as beings of light.
Right.
So if they're on that higher dimension and that higher vibrational state, then perhaps the sun has something to do with them appearing that way, because the source of light. That's what I mean.
I understand. Yeah, I hesitate to make the connection between the experience and the source, because a lot of times we don't have...
But where does light come from? Like, without electricity, it would be the sun.
Have y'all seen Ron Howard's Cocoon 1 and 2?
Yeah.
Ron, he was tripping on that one, I think. I don't know, maybe.
Yeah.
I did some shrooms, but I don't know. But those are weird. Those are weird. Those are some weird movies.
Science fiction and fantasy have given a culturally manufactured sense of plausibility to a lot of things, including conscious AI. I don't see that as a possibility. No. It's not going to be sentient. People conflate intelligence with consciousness. Those are two different things.
It will never be able to feel.
It'll get more and more intelligent. That doesn't make it conscious. To make that error, to me, to make that category error would be like if you had a stereo with 4 speakers and then you bought 4 more speakers. It doesn't suddenly become a flat screen TV. Adding more of something to something doesn't make it what it's not. Right? It's a simulation. It mirrors or mimics human intelligence, and without us, it's an Etch-a-Sketch, because what it's learned and what it's be able to do is from us. If it has a woke mentality and some kind of a judgmental opinion to it, that was learned.
Yeah, it can tell you
through the LLMs, like the large language models. It learns that. It doesn't have an inner phenomenal conscious life of its own, but people think it does because they conflate the fact that it's intelligent and then we're intelligent, so that it makes it bridge the gap to humanity. We don't make the same mistake with mannequins just because they're I always forget the word. They're a likeness of our physicality, right? We don't make the same mistake and go, well, mannequins are going to be conscious because they are a mirror image of our physical form. But we do it with consciousness, because intelligence and consciousness, we confuse the two.
Because it can tell you it loves you by what you're telling it, but it can never feel that love. It's just learned that if certain words are said, the appropriate response to you will be, I love you.
Yeah.
But it's not really feeling that love. It can never feel that love. It's a machine.
And we should pause before we jump into those kinds of things too. A lot of people will think that it will become conscious. As soon as you say that, then you remove the idea of free will, because AIs are algorithmic. Our consciousness, our mental states are not. we're not algorithmic. We can make novel decisions in a second and do something else. Those things cannot do what they want at will in a similar way to how we can do it. So as soon as you say that, then you're taking free will off the table, which is a whole other can of worms to open up. It just mimics our intelligence, and it's amazing what it can do, but it's not the same thing as consciousness. It be just because it's a simulation. You can, on a computer powerful enough right now, you can simulate kidney function down to a molecular level on a computer right now. But it doesn't mean that your computer is going to pee on your desk, because of the simulation is not the thing simulated.
You're muted.
Oh, there's a piece of art I had AI do. I was going to try to show it. I'll do it in a minute, but it was crazy good from Chat GPT. I was like, damn, that's good. Like, hope you didn't steal that from somewhere.
Well, even that, it is learned from other things. It does not have the creativity of an artist to create that. If it's creating something artistic, it is pulling that from other learned sources. It absolutely is. It doesn't have the ability to create something artful from a feeling or an inspiration from scratch. But that's another thing that people will think that it's going to be artistically driven. It's not.
It can probably create something that's unique, but that's because it pulled in from a whole bunch of different places and put it together.
Right. And that is where the intelligence of AI may seem to surpass or be more efficient than us, is that we can hold on to one focal thing with our attention cognitively, where it's able to grab groups of associations simultaneously the way it works. So it can pull more things and hold on to more things at the same time simultaneously in a way that our focus does not allow us to do.
I was trying to find it. I'll have to look for it later. I lost it somewhere. But it made I said something like psychedelics, alien, wizard, like just something weird. And it like made a dude like a wizard and a Native American guy and an alien, a reptilian. Like it did it like that. It was crazy.
Yeah. All those things exist out there in learned AI systems and data.
And all technology is like that, because if you decide to build a car and it's just you, and right, because we're humans, we're doing it. But if you put a whole bunch of machines together and get the assembly line, you'll get a whole bunch of cars done. So it's the same thing with the intelligence of the AI. It can pull out from so many things where we are limited in that, or at least we don't use the capacity of our mind. Maybe we are capable of doing it, but we are limited because, you know, we don't use the full capacity of our mental consciousness, I guess. But it's the same thing. It's just pulling from so many different places. So it's able to
it hold on to multiple associations at the same time.
Create quicker than we can.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
Ah, that is pretty cool.
It's quite good.
So is that you in the middle, Jeff, and Mark is on the left, Nam's on the on the right.
Jeffrey's muted again.
Man, I gotta quit. Christina's here. We just had some dog apocalypses, so I have to mute it sometimes, and then I forget I muted it. But
Christina's in the eye in the middle there.
Yeah,
That was Lamb. I was thinking
she's
about
right
that
here. Here, you go on cam for a second.
one.
Hi, how are
Hi,
you?
Christina.
Hello, y'all.
Nice to
And that-
meet you.
Nice to meet you.
That shadow behind there is not the devil or Francis Ford Coppola, Gary Oldman, Dracula. It's a Cthulhu.
Oh, how funny! Look at that.
It's a Cthulhu bank, like one of those H.P. Lovecraft Cthulhu banks. It's like a bank, But anyway, I was thinking earlier, you know, my uncles are dead, my dad's dead, my grandparents are dead. And there's a point where you're just like, well, where did they go? It's just like some fundamental caveman death questions. And how do you get there? And you got to die to get there. That kind of sucks. Dying kind of sucks. But it's like, have you ever seen the show The Leftovers on HBO where they get raptured? And it's like, that's the kind of feeling. It's like they've been raptured or something. But that show gets into, there's a rapture and it's like the aftermath of it. It gets pretty crazy. I bought the book, but I never read it, but I bet it's good. But it's just those fundamental questions that most of this paranormal and everything, that's the fundamental question, isn't it? That's the root of it.
Don't you feel sometimes that your father's around?
Yes.
See? but you don't see him, right? Like
Yeah.
he's vibrating in a higher state where he is. He's probably always around. It's just that you don't sense him all the time, and
So weird.
since you can't see him,
Have
yeah.
you seen Midnight Special with Michael Shannon and that little boy? Have you ever heard of that movie, Midnight Special?
Yeah.
Look it up sometime. It has Michael Shannon in it, and there's a little boy that I'm not going to get into it too much, but there's a whole interdimensional realm of like light beings, and the little boy has a connection. It's really good. It's called Midnight Special. It's kind of a weird gem. I could watch it again. What was the one? Jules. Did y'all get to see that with Ben Kingsley and the little blue alien?
We're gonna have to start watching some movies.
Yeah, really.
There's one called JULES, and it came out a few years ago. An alien crashes in Ben Kingsley's yard, and it destroys his plants. And he's kind of like a eccentric old dude, and he has to go before the townspeople, and he's telling them about it, and they just like look at him like he's crazy. But there's really a little witty, weird alien living in his house. But it's good. It's a comedy. It's not like horror or anything, but it's good. It has some great actors in it, but definitely. I got to know one thing that I'm thinking about too. Have you kept up with Skinwalker Ranch? I'm sure you have. I got to know what your mind thinks about some of that stuff, man. That show is going on a level that has made my jaw drop. Even though I have trouble believing everything, I believe there's phenomenon there, but I don't trust everything on there. Even though maybe it is all true, but I still am always hesitant. And I've kept up with Chris Bledsoe. That's some weirdness in itself. And when I was younger, I kind of had some abilities where I saw those kind of things like he does. But I also bought UFO of God, the book. I haven't read it yet, but I know I've been on Amazon looking at the reviews. It's pretty weird. Like, it's like everybody's in the comments like, we can do that too. And it's like, this feels like a John Carpenter movie that's going to get out of hand. And then
fundamentally, we can all do it. It's just that we've suppressed ourselves from it, and we'll say that we're crazy, or they're crazy, or it doesn't exist, or over vivid imagination, right? But we can all do it because we're all consciousness. It's just that we have lost ourselves, right? We're not as spiritual as we used to be with the indigenous people and things. It's in all cultures. We all had it at some point, but as the generations keep going and going, we keep getting further and further away from it, and then we suppressed it by saying it's mental disease, it's a hallucination, it's an over imaginative,
Right.
child.
And guess why those things get slung at people? Physicalism. Because if the paradigm or the belief system does not allow for these things to happen, then they have to be defects, and then that's when they become some kind of an ailment or some kind of a deficiency or some kind of a processing problem or pareidolia. You're hearing what you want to hear,
and why did that happen?
Or it's a hallucination, which is ironic when somebody tells you didn't experience something, it was just a hallucination. Because the experience of a hallucination is still an experience.
You still experience it.
It doesn't mean it didn't happen. If through what you call a hallucination, you go, well, you can't take it literally, you still have to take it seriously, because something that does have some kind of a vital role or something that is important did cause it to happen. Something is behind the fact that it happened. So even if you didn't have the experience that you would take literally and you go, well, it's a hallucination, still something caused the emergence of that experience. You still had the experience. Doesn't mean it didn't happen.
At some point, a long, long time ago, and I don't remember when it happened, science and spirituality worked together. It wasn't separate. The reason why the scientists back then had to separate the two was because the church was killing them. So in order to save their lives and not be beheaded, they said, okay, we'll just do the science part and you can take the spirituality of it. And so those scientists that knew the truth died off.
Yeah.
And then as the generations keep going, it got lost.
Yeah.
But that is why it's separated, because they were trying to survive.
Yeah, Giordano Bruno was burned at the stake for it. And there was somebody in religion, I don't remember the name of the gentleman, who was on record saying that they knew that materialism was not correct as an explanation for a worldview or for reality, but they needed it to survive. And then they used it as a weapon to try to supplant the church, who, by the way, Mark, to bring it back to what you were saying before, the church who ruled for decades, for hundreds of years, without an army other than during the period of the Templars, on the fear of what happens when we die. They controlled populations just on that.
Yep.
That's how profound that question that Jeffrey was saying, that people wonder. That's how profound that question is, that they were able to control populations just on that fear of what happens when you die thing.
And then that's part of it, because as a weapon, as a church, and that's probably how we came to a certain point, I think in the 80s, was it, when science killed God. They're like, right? There was no more God, and people got lost and started going into all these different religions, and things got all like messy, because now they're saying God doesn't exist, and that once there's no afterlife. But you know, the weapon that came from it was that. But that's not true either. It just created more mess.
Do you guys know about Neil Donald Walsh at all? Have you heard of him? The Conversations with God guy? Neil Donald Walsh, Conversations with God. Look him up sometime. It's Neil Donald Walsh, Conversations with God. There's a movie about it. They showed it at churches and stuff, but it's not really, I don't know if I consider it Christian, but basically, just to break it down, he was a guy that was like 50. He went through a divorce, broke his neck, and just went through hell. And I've been there, God knows, and ended up at a park. And he was just like, God, please don't let me die here homeless with a broke neck and a divorce. And that little voice spoke to him. He wrote it down. International bestseller, Neil Donald Walsh. When I read it, I get goosebumps.
I'm getting goosebumps right now.
Well, check them out.
There's a brilliant
something telling me the truth on something that when I tell
and
the
that happens to us more than
once.
once. That's never happened to you, where you was maybe in a really down state, and people tend to ignore it. But and there's just something that you hear in your voice that may steer you in a different direction.
Really
it happens to us.
Something. He was definitely talking to God, possibly.
Yeah. There's a really brilliant author and researcher of the humanities and of religious history and studies named Jeffrey Kripal. And he talks about he talks about that a lot of
comic book, something about mutants, some kind of book like that.
He has a book called Mutants and Mystics. I read that one. He has several books actually. It's really good. And he talks about how a lot of these phenomenological experiences happen as a result of a trauma. And you think, well, we equate trauma with tragedy or something negative, but it's just something that puts your body in its natural state a little bit out of whack. So under those guidelines, meditation, which some people have these transcendental experiences under, meditation is a form of trauma because it's putting your body into a state that's not its normal resting or natural state. It's bringing it to a different state of being. So if you look at what Jeffrey said his experiences were, this guy, right, again, dealing with trauma, and then these phenomenological things happen. Also, to Lourdes' point about the separation of science and spirituality stuff, these things should work together. They should govern and inform each other. They shouldn't be mixed. Why do I say that? Any epistemological means of gathering knowledge, any method of acquiring wisdom or knowledge, gains its strengths in large part by that which it can't speak to, by what it can't reach, right? What science can't speak to and explain, or what gives it its strength. Because if you are operating and commercing outside of those boundaries, then you're not doing science, right? It's not all encompassing. Everything doesn't get shoved under science. We dilute it that way, and then we end up with trying to apply the scientific method to something that's, philosophical or metaphysical. So it's important that they work together, and that there's a joint effort that involves spirituality and religious ideas and Eastern philosophy and metaphysics and science. That's important. And we get that a lot too with the paranormal, saying that people will call it a pseudoscience, or they'll say that it's not a science. Paranormal research, or what we call paranormal, which for us as idealists is normal. It's not supernatural, it's natural. It's nature doing what it does. It's just more rare. We can't invoke a black hole in a lab, right? So just not being able to cause it at repetition because we want to. Again, that same conflation of does something exist versus can you will it to happen? So that doesn't disqualify it. It's an observational science. If you're going to say that paranormal studies or afterlife research is not an observational science, then per force you have to throw out astronomy, sociology, anthropology, zoology, right? Because you can't study the behaviors of meerkats by putting them in a cage in a zoo. You can't study the behaviors of an untouched tribesman from some remote part of the world by putting them on a couch in a Holiday Inn.
It takes them out of their environment, right? Right.
Well, what I got to know is with the Skinwalker Ranch thing, looking at it, I think it could be some kind of alien phenomenon. It could. Their computer there is named Satan. Was that a good idea? Like, is it Satan they're talking to, like a John Carpenter movie? And but anyway, my other concerns is it could be Israeli intelligence, China intelligence, Russian intelligence, like some weird military black ops from another country doing tricks on people. I don't know, but I think there's phenomenon that I've seen as well, very similar to that phenomenon. So I know there's something going on. But that brain of yours, both of y'all's, I just got to know, what do you think about some of that stuff? I know it's a lot, but we only got about 7 minutes. It's not
I think over there, it has something to do with the geographical area. There's something in that area where that the phenomena that you don't usually experience here in New Jersey happens over there. And there's places like that all over the world, like Lake Titicaca and all these other, that they just have a very high concentrated energy, EMF, whatever is going on in there, that then you are able to have more paranormal experiences. So that's what I think it's going. It's a lot to do with the environment and where the ranch is located.
I mean, that to me, that's coherent to me. I can get on board with that. That's another mistake too, I think, that we make when people go, well, if this phenomena, ghost or whatever, or even what happens there, if it's real, then you need to be able to take it into a lab and replicate it.
Yeah.
And that's operating off an unexamined assumption. It's making an unexamined assumption, which is that we know everything that's contributing to the phenomena, and we don't. If you take something out of where it happens and then move it to a lab, which I understand why, because of the rigor you can practice there to rule out false positives and control is important. But without knowing everything that contributes to the phenomenon, when you move it somewhere else to try to replicate it or do it again, even once, you are biasing the experiment, whether you know it or not, because you don't know everything that's causing it. It could be something that happens at a larger macroscopic scale, at a level of complexity that only happens when it becomes more. It could be something that's affected by things that go miles. Right. But we make the unexamined assumption that everything that happens starts from microscopic and then goes to macroscopic where we see it, which may or may not be true. But when we assume that to be the truth and then take it from where it happens and put it in the lab, we are automatically biasing the experiment. And then if it doesn't play out, we go, see, it wasn't legit. It's not real.
It's like when you take psychedelics, right? You're changing your mental state. So there's something about that location where it has such concentrated high levels of EMF or whatever else that it has, that is allowing more phenomena to happen that we don't have over here, or maybe in your area.
Yeah, I would almost agree entirely. The only thing, and this is we have this all the time, I wouldn't say that it's allowing it to happen. I would say that it's allowing it to be modulated into our experience. That it may always be happening, but we don't always experience it.
Yeah, that's what I mean when I say it. Yeah, that's what I mean. It's making it's making the location more porous for things to. Well,
it's making the experience more porous.
Yeah. So like that, it gets modulated into our existence over there. That's why they get so many readings when they do you take that thing, you bring it over here. You don't get those kind of readings, but we don't get those kind of phenomenons over here.
Yeah.
So
we make that connection a lot in the paranormal. We're thinking that something's causal when it's correlative to like that. Ghosts drain our batteries on our equipment is very popular. I don't know of an example of that happening that anybody knows. If you've been somewhere and your batteries died and you had no phenomenal activity, or you've had phenomenal activity and your batteries didn't die, then that leaves you in a position to make the causal connection. What makes you think that? The same people will say that these spirits and stuff are just pure energy. They're disembodied. They're just pure energy. So then that begs the question, what pure energy needs to suck dry a couple of 9 volts to manifest?
Yeah.
What could perhaps be happening is that something is happening within our field of subjectivity, and it is affecting as a byproduct or an epiphenomenon of the experience, also the battery, or also causing something perhaps like the glass to shatter or something. So not that that's what's causing the phenomena, but that could be something that happens as a result of the phenomena. But when those things line up, we go, oh, the ghost drained my battery. I've never seen a direct connection.
So then that's probably why there's more alien sightings over there, because the experience, like he says, is modulated. So now you're able to see them because there's something in that environment that you are now able to see that. Because usually alien sightings is not, we don't see them. It's usually in certain areas. Certain areas are the hot spot, right?
Yeah.
There's something about that area that is allowing you to have that experience, that you are now able to it gets modulated and you're able to see a UFO or alien being, light beings, whatever it is, you know. So that's what we think.
Yeah, I think all those different types of beings and stuff, to me, it's plausible that they can all be real. They can very much be real. In the same way that we only appear physical, but we're not fundamentally physical, I would say the same thing applies. They're just not dissociated in the same way we are, so they don't perhaps. And sometimes people see apparitions that do seem physical. They see apparitions that they thought was a real person until they were not there anymore.
Yep.
So to me, that makes the case of the dissociative state that we're talking about, that we exist in.
Well, that's what I say about the light when he was talking about it. So when they see, it's because they have the light, but there's other stuff going on that you're able to see the full apparition in its whole. But if it's not everything else and just light, then that's what you'll see. It will be a being of light. That's why I was saying, and the only way for me that would happen, because if we didn't have this man-made electricity, the source of light is the sun for us. Yeah, that's what it is. So the sun has, to me, the sun has something to do with it. I don't think the sun is conscious, right? I don't think it has consciousness. But when you see those light beings, if it's just light, the sun has something to do with it being modulated and him having the experience of light being.
Yeah, I wrote down sun frog soul tadpoles in my notes. But anyway, we got to end the show. But what a great show! What a great show! Thanks so much. I like the intellectual level that this goes to. Definitely tripping me out. I like it. We need it.
I think
we need it. We need it.
Everyone's IQs went up several points.
Yes, a lot of times we get ghost people. I'm not thinking of anybody in particular, but it's like we went to a barn, there was a ghost, and that's not anybody in particular, but you know what I mean. But y'all take it to the next level. I appreciate that. That's great.
We appreciate it. Yeah. Your friend Jeffrey Mishlove interviewed the gentleman who's responsible for where we've taken what we do now, the gentleman named Dr. Bernardo Castro, who's the one who puts forth this version of idealism called analytic idealism. I've been studying this stuff for a few years now, and about a year ago, I got to be part of an ambassadorship where I get to actually meet with him and talk to him every week. And that idealist metaphysical mindset and having an idea of what you think reality is and not conflicting with science, he had that influence on us, and it changed completely the way we look at this stuff and think, to make sense, right? Not to say that we're right, but to try to find explanation. I've been identified on a few podcasts. People thought I was a skeptic. I went, no, I'm not denying the experience. But what I am saying is that the explanation that's been floating around the ghost hunting field for decades is incoherent. It's invoking science and then conflicting with it at the same time. So very much salmon against stream, I put forth ideas to re-explain things like stone tape theory, psychometry, residual hauntings, and not the way they've been explained, because they do conflict with themselves as they've existed for decades now.
If you speak to Mr. Mishlove, you should ask him about him, because he interviews him a couple of times.
Yeah, Bernardo.
It's been a while, but yeah, I could probably approach him for sure. It does some amazing interviews, but we appreciate it so much. What's your links and everything? And we'll definitely get you back sometime for sure. Definitely. And we appreciate it. What's your links so everybody knows where to go? What you're called and your links.
So our website, I will give you the address for, and our website has links to everything. I have 5 books on Amazon. Number 6 is in the works. There's a couple academic papers that I wrote that are also on there. We have testimonials for what we do. There's video clips of what our method sounds like with the white noise and the voices. When we're appearing and where, an events tab. There's a link. I have a Substack now that I started doing for writing and releasing stuff. That link is on the website.
And we have
the
a
website,
YouTube channel too.
yeah, and that's also linked
Yeah.
off of there, as well as our personal Facebooks. So the website is GonYacParanormal.com. That's GonYac GonYacParanormal.com. And from there, all those things, the Amazon links,
We
everything.
have access to everything there.
All right. We appreciate it so much. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Wham. And thanks, you guys. We appreciate it so much. Everybody have a great weekend.
Thank you
and
for having us.
Yes, thank you
Thank
for
you.
having us.
enjoy the end of Mercury retrograde.
Have a great weekend. Yes.
Yeah.
And hopefully somehow that brings an end to whatever the hell is happening to America right now. That's terrifying. That's just in the Iran stuff, some kind of peace, because this just, man, it's stressful. Just look, I have to look at it for my job, unfortunately. But I have archives at Rumble that get 300,000 hits a piece, so I'm definitely. I'll send y'all the link. But I appreciate it. Take care. Y'all have a good weekend.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
all so much for having us.
Nice meeting you all.
Bye. She'll sit in again too sometime.
Peace and love. That's
Peace
what
and
we need.
love. That's all.
Thank you. You too.
Hasta la pasta.
Stole my line.
I did.
Capiche.
How do you get out of here? I'm trying to end the stream. In the stream.
If you have a paranormal experience that you would like to discuss on the show, please email us at paranormal.insight.podcast@gmail.com. That's paranormal.insight.podcast@gmail.com.